Welcome to the second part of the third chapter of my book, A Journey from Jamaica to Becoming. I wanted to state a few things just before you start listening to part two. One, some of the dates may be off. Remember, I'm telling you about my life story starting from when I was a child. Some of the dates I don't immediately remember, so I'll correct those once my book is published. Two, I'm not exactly sold on the name. So as I go along, I might change the name of my book, but the chapters will remain. So if you have any suggestions, please make the suggestions down in the comment box. And three, the pictures that you're seeing are is not the true depiction of the characters in the book. I just use pictures that I found on Google so that you'll be able to listen to the audiobook. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, turn on post notifications, give me your suggestions under this video, and please enjoy. Have a wonderful day. From me at Blooms and Stitches by Anne Marie. Since I set my common entrance, I had been sick with worry. I wanted to do well, to make my mother proud, and to make the people in my community proud too. So many people who had seen me sitting beside mommy's roadside stall at night doing homeworks under the street light would always tell me how much they're praying for me and how proud they are of me. My aunt and cousin spoke about it often, and the stress of waiting for the common entrance results was slowly eating away at me. Things at home were not getting any better either. My mother's feet had developed deep cracks on both soles, and there were days she could barely walk. That meant either myself or my heavily pregnant sister had to go to the market to buy peanuts for mommy to be able to sell. The trips to Haywood Streets were not for the faint of heart, but by then I had been a tough cookie. I learned never to let anyone know where I hid the money on my body while I was traveling to downtown Kingston, and I knew how to hustle peanut vendors for discounts. And so at 11, going on 12, I knew what a bushel of raw peanut, looked like without needing a scale. I knew which peanuts were worth buying and which ones to avoid. I could also walk from Wellington Street to downtown Kingston if needed, though most times mommy usually made sure I had enough fare to take the noisy JOS buses. Most times I bought peanuts, sugar, and 4x7 plastic bag that she would use to package the peanuts in. I usually went on a Saturday while my sister would handle weekly trips. I knew she was trying to mend things with mommy after the pregnancy news because they argued less often nowadays. It wasn't all good between them, but it wasn't all bad either. My second sister had already returned to St. Anne's by then after securing mommy promise that I would spend the summer holidays there. In the meantime, I continued my regular chores. And since mommy could no longer wash the clothes properly because she wasn't feeling well, I took over the laundry every Saturday morning. It was always a competition between our family and the other tenants to see who would get the washing line first. So I would wake up at the crack of dawn just to make sure our wash was hanging before anyone else had a chance to claim the best spot on the line. My mother was a stickler for spotless white clothes. I had to use cake soap and a little square of triple crown blue, lather the garments, and let them soak overnight in plastic bag. And if you're from Jamaica or another part of the Caribbean, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Other clothes were scrubbed with cake soap, and for the ones that had too much stains on them, we would put them in a cheese pan and boil the clothes to get out the stain. If my mommy ever saw one stain on the white clothes or it looked a little dull, she would yank them off the line and let them fall to the ground. And that meant I had to start all over again, which was extremely hard. And so I made sure that at the first go, I washed the clothes properly. My sister, our mommy, would cook, and my sister and I took turn cleaning. We had wooden floors on the one room, and the wooden floors was dyed with red oak and polished with genie floor polish. Afterwards, I had to get down on my knees with a brush, a coconut brush, and scrub the floor until it clean. And then it doesn't end there. Then I would have to use a piece of cotton cloth to buff it for extra shine. The women in our family were known as excellent cooks. When times got hard, they would cook and sold a little food just to survive. And this is what my aunt used. My aunt was living beside a boxing gym, and she would sell cooked food from the gym's cafeteria during the week. But on the weekend, outside of her yard, she would cook small things like soup or jerk chicken and sometimes jerk pork. Mommy and my eldest sister were remarkable cooks as well. We rarely had money for expensive meats, so our proteins were usually of the more affordable kind. Looking back, I suspect that my mommy never forced me to cook. We couldn't afford for me to burn the food. Don't get me wrong though, I could do the basics at 11 or 12, like fry an egg, cook rice, make corned beef, but I didn't start preparing more difficult meals until I was already in high school. Because of her pregnancy, my sister couldn't work much. At one point, mommy started giving her peanuts to sell on her own so she could help herself. I believe she genuinely tried. Maybe because she feared mommy would throw her out again, or just maybe because she saw how desperate things were and she was worried about raising her baby in poverty. My sister was slender, barely 5 feet tall. You would think pregnancy might soften or fill her out, but it didn't. She worried a lot. We were all surviving off the tiny business mommy had built, and sometimes when my second sister visited from St. Anne's, mommy would have to press a little money into her hand before she left. And then, since Hurricane Gilbert, our room was still leaking. The overseer claimed he wasn't well enough to fix it and said the landlord needed to provide materials first before he could even try. So when it rained, we had to place containers everywhere in that one room to catch the dripping water. Eventually, somebody gave us a tarpaulin to spread over the rooftop, and that became the permanent solution. No repairs was done, and in the middle of this, we still hadn't heard from my father who was residing abroad, who we thought might as well have been non existent from the beginning at this point. There was little comfort in life except from my books, my precious mystery novels, my comic books. I rushed through Saturday chores and prayed that Tom Redcom Library wasn't closed before I got there. Some days I skipped lunch at school and saved my little 5 cents lunch money just to see that I could take a book and exchange those old books for new ones. If I arrived even 2 minutes late at the library on a Saturday after closing, I just felt like I would cry. And then I would just sit and watch the children outside. They seemed so happy coming out of the library. They were being picked up by their parents or they were heading off in groups of their peers to enjoy their afternoon, while I had to head back to maybe set up mommy's stall or relieve her so she could go lie down on days when she was not feeling well. And she was doing that a lot these days. It worried both myself and my eldest sister as well. Whenever I relieved mommy at the stall beside the bar, there was always this one man who singled me out to ask about school. Sometimes the bartender or the drop on lady unit would chase him away. Other times they left him alone. He could be a little bit annoying, but sometimes his conversations were interesting. As a child, I couldn't be disrespectful and not answer his questions. He often talked about his children who attended the same primary school as I did. He was a very dark skinned gentleman with the whitest teeth I've ever seen and thick beard. He looked like a black version of Santa Claus, except he was much slender. He always bought the newspapers, and after learning that I loved to read, he would lend me his newspaper with a strict instruction to return it before he went home. That was how I discovered newspaper held treasures beyond comics. You see, I love Charlie Brown, the horoscope, and Tell Me Pasta that was in the Star. Because of those papers, I became familiar with names like Noriega, George Bush, Gorbachev, and Margaret Thatcher. At 11 years old, those were already familiar names to me. Now I could add the Gleaner and the Star to my growing list of things that I really love to read. One day I asked mommy to buy a newspaper for me, and she looked at me like I was crazy. She said, "We need food for eat. You have newspaper money?" After that, I never asked again. Instead, I look forward to Sundays at my aunt's house. Why? Because her husband worked with the Gleaner newspaper and he would bring home the old newspaper. And that was how I got those to read. However, there was a catch. He was working with the Gleaner archives, and sometimes he would cut out pieces of the newspaper which left gaps in the stories that I read. Anyways, common entrance results were expected by mid June, and as the date drew nearer, my stomach rebelled, as it usually does when I'm extremely worried or stressed. I lost weight from barely eating and had nightmares about men chasing me with guns. I just wanted the time to freeze, but it just would not. Another doctor visit, more Pepto Bismol, extra irons, vitamins, and then the result day arrived. As expected, the results was printed in the newspaper, and everyone was frantic, scrambling to get their copy to see who passed for what traditional high school. My aunt had three children at that time, two boys and one girl. I didn't think of them as cousins, but as weekend brothers and sisters. My female cousin was older than I was and was already attending Camperdown High School. Mommy had chosen Camperdown High School as my second option and Convent of Mercy Academy Alpha as my first. Secretly, I wanted to go to Camperdown. I hoped my cousin would become my real friend while I was attending that high school. At school, they didn't tell us the results directly. We were sent home for our parents to break the news to us. And that day, as I left the school gate, dread crawled up my little spine. I began sweating. My nerves were so shattered that I thought it best to go home early rather than late. Because if I failed to arrive late, too, mommy might beat me for both of them, for failing the exam and for coming home late, and that would just be disastrous. I hurried along Windward Road, praying mommy wasn't already at the stall. I knew a flogging could happen anywhere or anytime. You see, once when I accidentally locked the key inside the house, mommy had come home from market exhausted and angry. And after failing to get in, she turned her anger out on me with a belt. Two slaps landed before she looked, and it was the belt buckle. I wet myself instantly. And the children in the yard stood watching while I felt something warm trickle where the buckle cut into my skin. I ran that day. I ran and she chased me down the road while swinging the belt, and everyone was watching. That day, I escaped to my aunt's house, and that memory never left me. So, as I neared the corner that day, my heart stopped. Mommy's stall was out, and it was surrounded by a huge crowd. My vision blurred. I decided not to approach. Instead, I turned towards home, creeping up Wellington Street with my head down. In my mind, the crowd was consoling mommy, which could only mean bad news. My eyes filled with tears, and then I heard someone shouted, Ann, your mother a call you little girl. It was another vendor pointing behind me. I turned, and there was mommy running towards me in the middle of Windward Road. My mind screamed, Run and run! But I just couldn't move. Her face looked different. She was running, smiling, and crying all at once. Her arms stretched wide open, and every fear inside me just melted away. In that instant, I knew. You pass, Anne, you pass! She screamed as she ran towards me. The roaring in my ears grew louder as I buried myself into her peanut scented embrace. Another vendor cried out, Lord Jesus, this nicey. That night was the first in a long time that I slept without nightmares. That year, I was the only girl out of three students from Almsby Primary School on Windward Road to pass for a traditional high school. I got my first choice. I wouldn't attend school with my cousin, but I would get to borrow books from Alpha High's library. Everyone on the corner congratulated mommy and I. Uni bought me a Malta because she knew how much I loved that drink, and I wallowed in it. The newspaper man gave me his newspaper to keep that day, but mommy immediately snatched it because she wanted to keep it as a souvenir. I smiled. Everything was just going just right at that moment. The whole weekend felt like a celebration on its own. I still had chores that I had to do, but mommy cooked ackee and red rain with boiled dumplings, which was my absolute favorite meal. I was in heaven. Mommy's best friend, my godmother who worked in Jordan. Yes, you heard me. Aman Jordan abroad visited at that time, and she brought me the prettiest white lace dress I had ever seen. It was to be my graduation dress. People gave mommy little gifts, $2 here, $5 there, just to help. Many said that they had watched me doing homework on the roadside stall. They saw my worn uniform. They knew I often walked home hungry because mommy couldn't afford lunch. People saw our struggle and they just wanted to help because attending this high school would be expensive. It would be very expensive, especially for a peanut lady with health problems and a grandchild on the way. But every cent mommy had or could gather went towards making sure I graduated in style. She was proud. Our graduation took place at St. Michael's Anglican Church on the same ground as the school. The ceremony felt endless, but I never forgot when my grade 5 teacher hugged me and she said, Anna, I told you so. Now go be great, child. My jaw ached from smiling so hard and my heart sang. A few weeks later, a package arrived from my high school. It was addressed to me, but mommy accepted it. Inside were fee vouchers, uniform details, orientation information, and documents mommy needed to bring to the school. Reality hit me like sunshine. I was really going to high school. My second sister was visiting more often, though I thought nothing of it. I wish mommy simply had room for all of my sisters and brothers to live together. I also noticed worry etched across mommy's face as she looked through the envelope. There was an extra long book list, and even it had a book voucher rental as well. It was just a lot. and I could see tears filling her eyes. She sighed and hissed her teeth. My sister spoke quietly with her, but I didn't hear anything. I was just floating too high in happiness to hear. Nothing could pierce this happiness bubble that I had going around me right now. My joy even multiplied when mommy agreed to let me go to St. Anne's and visit with my sister for a few days. I would have to return early, so I couldn't stay there long because I needed to come back to do my vaccine updates, my uniform measurement, and I had August orientation. But still, I was happy. The bus ride to St. Anne's was pure excitement. This time I wasn't traveling alone and I was traveling with one of my sisters as well. Everyone in Farmtown seems to know that I had passed my common entrance and they congratulated me from every direction that I walked in. Even my sister's father, who once reminded me that he was not my dad, managed to say a few kind words to me. Grandma laughed and cried, and she hugged me tightly. And I was so happy that I could make her proud as well. The next morning, my second and third sister said that they were taking me to my father so he could help me with my school free fees. I froze. My father was Linville in Jamaica and mommy didn't know? I asked my sister how long she had known that Linville was in St. Anne's. Tappy, she snapped. Then she told me sharply that it was Shine Brown they meant and I had better stop talking foolishness. I was confused. Did mommy know about their plan? Why had I never met this man, Shine Brown, before? Why had my sister teased me for years with the name Shine Brown Ganja Teeth in such a horrible fashion and no want to bring me to meet him? If mommy believed Linval was my father, why was this man now being presented to me? All of this just made me feel sick. All the happiness I'd worked so hard for just vanished in a few seconds. And I just didn't want to go. But they were my older sister, and I felt powerless to refuse. Around midday, we reached Discovery Bay Square and walked into the post office that was near to the square, which also doubled as a small shop. There was a woman behind the counter and she looked at us in an angry way. My sister told me to wait outside while both of them went in and they spoke with her. I did hear them call her Mrs. Brown, but the rest was muffled. Afterwards, they said that we had to wait. The little wait turned into 2 hours. Eventually, the lady came out and she said, I'm not coming here again, so you can leave now. My sisters exchanged glances at this outcome. They then went and hailed a taxi, which took us to another house. They knocked at the gate of the house, and a dark skinned man, about the same age as my sister's father, came out smiling. He said to us, our Mattis clan doing at my gate. Mattis was my sister's surname. One sister replied, not all of us are Mattis. She pointed at me. This one is yours, Mr. Brown. This is Aunt Lydia's daughter. I glared at my sister. My head felt so hot. My mouth felt as if it was glued shut. I stared at the man my siblings had mocked me for years. His teeth were stained brown from tobacco. He had a small belly, like he was carrying his own 3-month-old child, and he had a lazy smile. He looked straight at me, and his eyes was as if they were mocking me. Then he said, Lydia tell you no am I pitney that? Tell Lydia say a lie she a tell. I hated him instantly once those words left his mouth. and I prayed I did not carry one drop of his blood in my body. My sisters argued with him for about 2 to 3 minutes, but I already stopped listening, and the roar in my ears was deafening me. No amount of flogging could have kept me standing to that spot after hearing him disrespect my mother in the way that he had. As I turned to walk away, he looked at me again and he said, "She's not my child. If she was my child, she would not have suffered the way she is currently suffering." Rejection. My sisters had brought me there to be rejected by this ugly man, and it hurt more deeply than I had words for. That night, I had the nightmare again. Someone was chasing me to shoot me. I was running and running and running. And when I looked back, the person smiled, and I saw tobacco stained brown teeth. I had so many questions going around in my mind. Did mommy know about this plan to bring me to this ugly man called Shine Brown? Did my father know that I was going to go to this man? Is that the reason why he stopped communicating with us? Why did my sisters hate me so much to embarrass me in such a way in front of this man? Did I do them something for them to hate me in this way? Is this something that grandma approved of? There were so many questions going around in my mind, but we will find out soon.